Amen. All right. So, God prepares a way. It looks different on my screen than on your screen. So, we've made it 63 lessons. Does it seem like it? I mean, it's taken a while to get here, but we've went in depth a lot. Now, when we get into the books of like Numbers and Deuteronomy, we can't go verse by verse lots of times, or y'all gonna be like, I ain't never coming back. I ain't gonna sit here and listen to the book of Deuteronomy. But it is detailed. It is detailed for a reason. This is, we're getting laws, specific laws. Now, if I tell you, y'all just get along, that's not really specific. You have to have specific laws, especially with a stiff-necked people or whatnot. So we're going to kind of be jumping around, So we're going to go and start in the book of Numbers.
Oh,
so
you're telling us we're going to Numbers and Deuteronomy.
Yeah, we're going to hop. So we might be in Numbers, we might be in Deuteronomy, we might jump to Leviticus or something like that, but we're just going to hop, it seems like, through the way the lesson goes. So our memory verse, Deuteronomy 7:9, therefore know that the Lord your God, He is God. Plain and simple. He's God. The faithful God who keeps covenants and mercy for 1,000 generations. Lord, we need it. With those who love Him and keep His commandments, and He repays those who hate Him to their face to destroy them. Good and bad, both right there. You reject Him or you obey Him. A clear dividing line. So we're coming from the giants. We've talked about the giants. We've talked about certain ones. And then when we pick up today, we're going to start with this guy, Sihon. That's how I say it. I don't know if that's how you really say it, but it sounds better to me. Sihon. All right. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him in just a minute, but just keep in mind that he's going to be a very mighty king. All right. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites. All right, these Amorites, if y'all remember, if you've read through the Old Testament, you'll hear that word a lot, the Amorites. We heard it when God's talking to Abraham, and He says the time of the Amorites is not yet full. He's going to destroy the Amorites. So the Amorites, what they did to make God so mad at them was when the Israelites were coming out of Egypt. All right, and they're going into the Promised Land. When they come out of the Promised Land, those Amorites are laying in wait, and they're the ones they pick off those at the back, the weakest, the elderly. That's easy spoils. So that's what they do. They lay in wait, and then they attack the end of the line. So that's why God is mad at them. So keep in mind that this is the people group. This is their king, Sihon, king of the Amorites. And they said, let me pass through your land. We will not turn aside into field or vineyard. That's important. We're not going to take your stuff. We're not going to step in a field. We're not even going to go into your vineyards. We will not drink even water from your wells. Now that's important, right? They got livestock and everything with them probably, or a bunch of people. We're not even going to drink from your wells. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your territory. They're very specific on the route they want to take and what they plan to do, which is just travel through. Simple. All right? But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together and went out against Israel in the wilderness, and he came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. Then Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the people of Ammon, for the border of the people of Ammon was fortified. Morning. You're fine. So Israel took all of these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites. This is part of God fulfilling that promise that He's going to wipe them out. He allows Israel to conquer them with the sword. They took the cities, and it says all the cities. That's important because there's not another one that can come against them. In Heshbon and all of its villages. So not just the bigger cities, they took the villages too. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab and had taken all of his land from his hand as far as Arnon. So if you want to picture it this way, Sihon, he comes in and he conquers this land and he gets it. And then Israel conquers Sihon and they get the whole thing. Does that make sense? So this king conquers this one, then Israel comes in and, okay, just making sure that makes sense. Therefore, those who speak in Proverbs say, come to Heshbon, let it be built. Let the city of Sihon be repaired. For fire went out of Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It consumed Ar of Moab, the lords of the heights of Arnon. Woe to you, Moab, you have perished, O people of Chemosh. He has given his sons as fugitives and his daughters into captivity to Sihon, to the Amorites. But we have shot at them. Heshbon has perished as far as Dibon, then laid waste as far as Nophah, which reached Medeba. Thus Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. Okay, I know there's a lot in there, and we didn't follow all that because I didn't follow all that. But the thing is the details make it important. They dwelt as far as from here to here. Now, here's a map, and if you can see the Jabbok River, Ammonites, Amorites, Amon River, Hebron. You know, lots of times when we're talking the Canaanites, Hivites, all those sound familiar, but we really don't know. We just kind of think they're just all in the land, and they are scattered all in the land. But what I want to show you is up here where Bashan is. Bashan is going to be up towards the north. Now, I found this one because this has the King's Highway. The King's Highway. So if you were, and we've talked about this before, Israel, the navel of the world, it is centered between 3 continents. Africa, and you want to go to Europe. Africa, you want to go to Asia, you have to come through. And most of the time they would travel the King's Highway. All right, so this little country right here, everybody's going through it, traveling to all these places. So I wanted to show you how the King's Highway went.
There's a song about walking the King's Highway. A gospel song.
Yeah. Right. So where Bashan is, and I'm going to point something out about this in a minute because I'm going to come back to this. Bashan, and you have Mount Hermon. All right. Mount Hermon's to the north. It's from this that we get, this is the Jordan River. It's going to come down. Sea of Galilee, Dead Sea. It's going to feed those. So let me give you a little bit of history here. So as far as the biblical data, the Amoritic king of East Jordan country, whose kingdom extended from the Arnon in the south to Jabbok in the north, excuse me, and from Jordan in the west to the desert to the east. According to Joshua, the desert of Arba between Jabbok and the Sea of Galilee was included in Sihon's territory. His capital was Heshbon, which he had captured from the king of Moab. He was also a suzerain of Midian, the 5 Midianitish kings, finally slain by the Israelites, being his vassals. Now, y'all remember when y'all was in school and you went over the feudal system where you had vassals and all of that? You know, like there's a hierarchy, and vassals are ones that pay tribute to the king, or they pay like a tax to remain in their land, or, you know, to that extent. You missed that day? Okay, so let's just say I'm the king and y'all are in little territories in my province or whatnot. For you to stay in charge of your little territory, you've got to pay me money. So you would be my vassal. Does that make sense?
I'm a vassal.
So it was saying, you know, he's saying that he's got that much power. He's got that much territory to where he had like vassals. So when the Israelites asked Sihon for permission to pass through his territory, he refused them and collected an army at Jahaz, where he was defeated and slain by the invaders, who took possession of his kingdom. Now listen, Sihon, like Og, you remember Og, the giant? Like Og, king of Bashan, was considered great and mighty monarch. Now here's the thing. The Bible does not tell us this, but if you go and you start looking into Jewish historical literature in the Midrash, it tells us that Og of Bashan and Sihon were brothers. So this is historical. I just want to keep that separate. Historical, not biblical. But they're beside each other. If you look at their territories, they would be beside each other. And, I mean, if you're going to have a kingdom, who do you want beside you?
Somebody come.
Somebody powerful. It helps if he's your brother.
I was gonna say,
Right?
Somebody knows
Yeah.
you like you.
Okay, and this is my question. If Og was 13 feet tall, what's his brother? Is it any wonder if Sihon's a giant too? He's one of, the Amorites. I mean, it doesn't really give us, his height like it does Og, but I'm just saying they're brothers. Just thinking here. Now, I wanted to tell you this, and this is another thing that you don't always get, and the reason that I point it out is because Satan tries to hijack everything, okay? So up here in this territory, Bashan, Og is from Bashan, and then you've got Sihon. But up here, right here at Mount Hermon, this is a very, how do I say this? Occultic site. And you're thinking, why in the world would the occult be drawn to that place? Well, if you start like researching and everything, in the ancient world, people thought they could connect with gods, false gods, in high places or in low places. Most of the time it's on high places. If you read through a lot of the altars built to false gods in the Old Testament from these Canaanites were on top of mountains. Or they would make a pole or, something that's going to raise up into the air. So at Mount Hermon, in a lot of ways, like there is a group of people who believe that the fallen angels, when they fell, they landed on Mount Hermon. I'm not telling you that to say that's fact. That is not biblical. I tell you that because that's one of the reasons that this is such an occult place. It's at 33.33 degrees longitude and 33.33 degrees latitude, right there on Mount Hermon. If you start studying Mount Hermon, at the base of Mount Hermon, you have the Grotto of Pan. If you remember, he's one of the false gods, Pan. He would play the little flute or fife or whatever it was, And the reason that I say this is because lots of times you have people who link the fallen angels, and then you have two giants side by side in territories at the base of that mountain. And they're trying to link Genesis 6 and the procreation of the sons of God and the daughters of men, creating giants, to these two giants right here at the base of Mount Hermon. And the reason I tell you that is because if you go research, and I don't want you to be shocked if you read those kind of things. My thing is, does it matter? No, it doesn't. We know there's giants in the land. It doesn't matter if Og and Sihon are brothers, if they're from fallen angels or not fallen angels. We know that at least Og was a giant. They were considered mighty kings, but they are no match for God and His will. That's the big thing. Not even in the occult. when you look at false gods, you look at the occult, you look at the things that have happened around Mount Hermon, even recently, the things that happened there, you cannot steal what is God's. This is God's territory. Today the boundaries of Israel are really a lot different than they are biblically. I've told y'all before, in my eyes, Israel still has all the land all the way to the Euphrates River. That's what God gave them. God had a purpose for bringing Israel into this territory specifically. I don't think it was just to conquer two giants. If you have the paganism, even of the Canaanites at that time, they were idol worshipers. They would sacrifice their children, and it was very
Evil.
yes. I mean, they would make their children walk on hot coals until they died.
I was gonna say, how do you do that?
Torture.
So it's that is an occultism of that day.
So of course, if you're sucked into it,
Yes.
you're like, people are sucked into things these days.
Right. So when we have the children of Israel coming into these lands, and we hear, or read God saying, annihilate everybody, man, woman, and child, lots of us want to think like, child, why would they do that? It's because of the evilness of these people. Even with Og and Sihon, they're not even letting them, they just want to pass through. They won't let them even do that. But there are many occultish accounts that even date back to this time. So the paganism was at this time, and it's kind of survived even until today into modern occultism. When you start researching that, it kind of goes back to what we were saying the other week about how Satan works, how he wants people to worship him or his demons. And that's why we have so many false religious systems. It's very, very prevalent in this land. There's a reason that God is wiping out these people. So Israel can come in, they can take over. This is going to be their nation, and God is a God of promises. He's going to keep that promise. So just a little bit about, ancient paganism, and it's still happening today. It's a very revered site in paganism today, too. So Satan doesn't change, does he? He continues to use the same things. People keep falling for it. Numbers 21, 32 through 33. Then Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they took its villages and drove out the Amorites who were there. And they turned and went up by the way to Bashan. So Og, king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. So they've already taken care of Sihon. Now they're coming in to take care of Og. Then the Lord said to Moses, do not fear him. I think Moses is like, I'm over 80 now, and this guy's 13 feet tall. But don't fear him. But what did he seen God do? What has he seen God do in his lifetime? A bunch of miracles. And
we do the same thing.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we need to look back and see how God has carried us through it as well.
Yes.
I mean, that's a lesson for us, even from Numbers.
Right.
So,
right.
sorry, I just had to.
No, you're good. You're good. Do not fear him, for I have delivered him into your hand. He had delivered him before he had delivered him. It was set with all his people and his land. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon. So they defeated him, his sons, and all his people until there was no survivor left him. And they took possession of his land. So let me give you a little bit of rabbinical literature. I'm just going to read a little bit. Sihon was the brother of Og. Both were grandsons of a fallen angel named Shebhazi. Something like that. Now this is from it's part of like the Midrash Niddah, Niddah 61a. And this just goes, I don't know if this is tradition, that's passed down. Lots of times that might not be as accurate. People just put their own little things in there. Oh, well, this is what this comes from, and it was this angel and this angel. I don't get into all that. I don't, if it's not biblical, I try not to, but just rabbinical literature and tradition says that Sihon and Og were brothers. It says in the Midrash that he resembled Og in stature and bravery. This is talking about Sihon, and was identical with Arad the Canaanite, being called Sihon because he was like the foals in the desert for swiftness. He was termed also the Canaanite after his realm. And it says, which included all Canaan, as he was a monarch of the land. He had vassal kings who paid him tribute. When the Israel asked permission to pass through his territory and enter Canaan, he said it would only to resist their attacks upon the Canaanite kings that he was in the land. If Sihon had retained his troops in various cities of the realm, the Israelites would have been able to take them only with difficulty. But God caused the king to collect his whole army in his capital, and thus enabled the Israelites to conquer. Although the city was so well fortified that Sihon had not been able to capture it from the king of Moab until he had called upon Balaam to curse the Beligard army. Keep that in mind, Balaam, because he's fixing to come up. He called on Balaam to curse these people. Sihon could be vanquished only after God had subjugated his guardian angel to Moses, quoted in Yalak, Num 764. So this is just rabbinical literature. And there are similarities with the Bible. I'm not saying it's 100% accurate. I'm not going to do that. But one of the things that stood out to me when you're reading this, because it's taking it straight from like the Midrash and stuff, was that he got all of his armies in one city. Bad move. You don't want all your eggs in one basket, and that's exactly what he did. But by him doing that, it allowed Israel just to conquer, all of it. They didn't have to go city to city to city. They could just take the whole thing because the army's gone. So strategic advantage to the Lord there, because Sihon made a bad move. So moving on to Deuteronomy. See, we're jumping. We just went from Numbers. Now we're going to Deuteronomy. And it says, and we took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we did not take from them. 60 cities. So we're thinking probably like 6. And then you read this and it was 60 cities. All of the region Argob, the kingdom of Og and Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, beside a great army, many rural towns. We tend to think in biblical times, especially dating all the way back here to Deuteronomy, that these cities were very, I'm just going to say rustic. They didn't have a lot of like architecture or useful architecture to keep out armies, but this proves it wrong. If they're fortified and they have gates and bars to keep people out, it's not as barren, I guess, as we would say. It's not easily to go in and wipe them out. We utterly destroyed them, as we did Sihon, the king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city. This is why I told you before, God has a purpose for what he's doing. But all the livestock and spoils of the cities we took as booty for ourselves. And at the time we took the land from the hand of 2 kings of the Amorites who were on the side of the Jordan from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon. The Sidonians call Hermon Siron, and the Amorites call it Senir. All the cities of the plain, all of Gilead, and all of Bashan, as far as Salcah to Edrei, cities of the king of Og of Bashan. And when we read all that, it's like, blah, 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 and we don't really pick it up. But if we start reading this in detail, this is how we can make the maps. Like I showed you before, this was this guy's territory. It went from this river to this one. So I like it when people just put it into a map and we can just refer to it, because it's really hard to read it and understand it just reading through it. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Now, if Sihon's already dead, he's the last one, right? Indeed, his bedstand was the iron bedstead. Is it not in Rabbah of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits in its length and 4 cubits in its width, according to the standard cubit. And this is just talking about his height. We've already went over that as around 13 something feet. Y'all fixing to go?
In a few minutes.
I can stop right here because we're fixing to get into Balaam and the donkey. And I don't want to go into it and then y'all have to leave. So I can stop right here.
We don't want to miss it.
Let's stop right here.
Thank you.
I just want y'all to understand where we're at. You know, with the maps and everything and Mount Hermon and, you know,
Now,
Satan's.
does that mean the
So we're-
giants will be gone now? They won't be out roaming around?
It would seem that way if he's the last of the remnant of the giants. Well, no, they have to survive because we've got David still coming up, Goliath still coming up.
Oh, wow.
So, and they're born to the giant of Gath, a remnant. Remnant.
It's remnant, just a little piece.
Yeah.
So there was just a little piece.
Exactly.
I've been listening to y'all's class.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's off,
If she
West
starts
Monroe, we can
teaching
work,
her
but they
Hepalites and woozles, y'all.
Saturday.